Hello, aspiring tropical freeze runners and enthusiasts. Not so newbie here. I'm going to be showing you a bit of a guide, a beginner's guide mostly, to movement tech, and general just good gameplay habits for the speedrun of this game. So I'm going to make this video with the assumption that you've played through most of the game, if not all of the game. It's pretty challenging by the end, so I understand if you haven't quite gotten there yet, but this guide should help you kind of get a hold of just the basic movement tech, the kind of things you want to be doing throughout the run, and sort of the differences with all the characters and what you can do with the characters. So we're going to start off here with just solo DK. Most of the casual play a lot of people do is just kind of walking and jumping and making good jumps and stuff. You can also roll in this game, obviously. And you can jump out of a roll, which is actually going to be our main form of movement with solo DK. So rolling and jumping out of a roll here. So I'm going to get down, just down a level here, to a spot that I can kind of start showing the basics off here. Good start, good start. Okay, so as you can see, yeah, we can jump, we can roll, and the jump rolls are particularly good because we can actually clear quite a bit of distance at maximum speed. So our roll speed is our basic max speed we want to be keeping as long as possible in this game. All we want to do is max speed, which we just call roll speed. So any roll, and when you stop a roll, you kind of just start running again. So we want to keep that momentum. The problem is you keep starting and stopping as you roll. So the way around that is to jump as soon as you're almost finished the roll for maximum value. So if we go for a roll, we get to about here. A roll from this rock, I'll just start, right? So a full roll takes us about here. So that's maximum speed up to there. Now if I jump in the middle of a roll, I'm going to be able to clear about this much distance with that speed. So as I jump and land, I want to start up a roll immediately again. So kind of the groove is just jump, roll, jump, roll. That's really all you want to be doing, as much of the game as possible. So as you can see, jumping allows me to kind of clear through a lot of enemies. Just run right past them and jump right over them. So that's kind of our goal here, is just to get right past a lot of things. Most obstacles, because as you can see, as I walk and jump, I kind of got to just maneuver around a bit, bop an enemy or so, and all of this takes a lot of time, so we don't want to do that. So jumping and rolling, combining that with kind of the bopping on enemies, also keeps our momentum, as you see. So it keeps us at roll speed. So kind of the groove we want to get into is jumping and rolling and bopping and stuff. You roll through enemies and on top of enemies and basically create kind of a route out of that. You can also get height off of enemies by bouncing on them. So as you hold the button longer, you get larger bops off enemies, which allows you to kind of make platforms like that and just generally route through your level. So we can do things like come up through things, roll through an enemy, jump, bounce on an enemy. Like, all these things keep us at maximum roll speed. And this is the kind of stuff you want to do pretty much throughout the run. You don't ever really want to be walking like this. That's the slowest form of travel, and you can't kill stuff. And it makes a lot of sections actually harder when you start just walking and going slowly, to be honest. So the groove you want to get into mostly with solo DK is just rolling and jumping, bopping, doing larger bops, and smaller bops kind of when you need to. You can do like a normal bop, and then a larger jump roll after that. And all your rolls and all your distance is all based on how long you hold the button. So I tap the jump button, I get little hops. I hold the jump button, I get large leaps. And you can go fairly far off edges. You can also roll off an edge and then jump in midair. That's a technique that was even in the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy. It's kind of a staple for DK games, so you can just sort of roll off an edge and jump while you're in midair to get a lot of distance. You can actually clear a fair amount of gaps just by doing that technique, by rolling off and then jumping. You'd be surprised what kind of stuff you can actually clear, what kind of enemy like hordes and what kind of gaps you can actually clear doing that. So that's kind of the basic just DK mechanic here. The next thing in the game, besides the rolling and jumping through stuff, is swimming. There's a fair amount of swimming in this game. So when you're swimming, basically you have the roll button, which actually gives you a roll underwater, really. It's a spin. And the spin is the fastest method to travel underwater with DK. Now the problem is at the end of these spins, you see there's kind of a little ending animation which slows you down a bit. So we want to keep this maximum speed, and you do it almost the same way as roll jumps on the ground. We can actually do a breaststroke with the B button here, with the jump button, and it's definitely slower to do it. However, If you do it right after a roll, you actually get to keep all of your speed, and you can keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling. So it's kind of like roll jumping, but you want to get a smooth little pattern. The way I kind of do it using the gamepad is I just roll my finger across. Do, 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 do. So I'll just show you as I go. Do, 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 do. So this keeps my maximum speed underwater at roll speed. And it's pretty much the fastest way to do it as DK. And you have to be careful with enemies too, though, because if you're not rolling, you'll just get hit by them. So that's kind of the groove you want to get into with the swimming. And then when exiting water, there's a couple ways to do it. You can do like a jump, like a spin out of the water. You get a woohoo, which is like Donkey Kong really excited. Woohoo! So there you can see I got a woohoo out of the water. There's also a way to do it where you're not in the air as long, because ideally you want to get onto the platform pretty much as soon as possible. And you can do that by just straight up hopping under the water. So you press the jump button as soon as you're coming out of the water, you'll actually just hop out. And then you can continue going through your path, roll, jump, bounce, and all that fun stuff after that. So that's some basic water techniques. If you just stand in place and press the roll button, you'll do a spin roll. And the spin roll is not particularly useful for most sections. However, it's good to note that out of a spin, if you're holding a direction, so if I spin and then hold down, let's say, I'm going to be immediately facing down. Or spin and left, I'm immediately facing left. So that's a good way to kind of readjust your orientation. It's a good little tool if you're kind of new at swimming still and it's a bit tricky. You can kind of like orient whatever you want. Diagonals, everything works really. So that's a good little trick that I would recommend when just trying to swim. And you also have quite a bit of control over DK if you just move the control stick as you're coming out of a roll. Okay, so that's basically the basic techniques to movement. As you can see, you can kind of roll through the level, jump over stuff. These plugs, if you just press A really quickly, jump as you're doing it, you'll pull the plug up really fast. So yeah, that's kind of your basic movement tech you want to be doing. You always want to be rolling and jumping, pretty much. You don't really want to slow down. You don't want to stop. And you'll find it becomes easier as you do that a lot. And I got a woohoo, but then we can come out of the water just by a little hop here. Okay, so that's pretty much DK. I'm going to grab a ditty and show off some of the ways the partners are important in this game. And as a general rule, because the partners give you an infinite roll, so instead of having to roll, jump with solo DK, what you can do is, you know what, I'm going to grab a ditty from the boss level. So instead of doing roll, jump, like you do with solo DK, with every partner you can do infinite roll. So you just keep tapping the roll button, and you'll continuously roll. And you can jump at any point. And it's useful because it lets you set up kind of specific jumps and all that. And every partner has their own ability, and they're all useful, so which is good. No partner goes unused. Some get more light than others. So we're going to start with ditty here. For good practice, if you want, you can always grab a partner, exit a level, and you'll have that partner going into any level you want. So it's a good little practice technique as well to get used to stuff. So we're just gonna do 1-1 again because there's a lot of good stuff I can show off. So yeah, again with the partner, you want a partner pretty much all the time in the game. I don't think there's any situation where you don't want a partner. Nothing becomes any easier. There are some things that are trickier. So bounces become trickier with Diddy and Dixie specifically, mainly because when you use their hover ability, you're actually losing momentum. You're losing forward momentum. So you're going to want to keep that speed and still bounce without hovering. So I'll show you how that works in just a second here. So here we go with Diddy. Diddy can roll just indefinitely. Just keep rolling. You can bounce on all the water with the partners. No timing is required for that. You can jump out of rolls and stuff. So you do the same thing where you roll jump, but it's a bit easier to time when you can kind of roll all the way into a specific point, roll through enemies, and just clear things. So you're going to want to be careful with the timing, but it's good to teach you kind of the timing. So with that bounce, this is a slight issue with Diddy and Dixie. So when you hold A, you hover, and as you see when I hover, I lose all my speed. So we want to minimize hovering as much as possible. And the way we do that is the way you bounce on the enemy. So as I'm bouncing, I gotta find an enemy, gotta respawn one. I kind of want to press the jump button as I'm landing on him or slightly after. Because if you hold before, you'll see I get a hover out of this. And then I lose all my speed anyway. So kind of what you want to do is either natural bop, which means not holding anything as you bop on an enemy. You'll get the smallest possible bounce. But again, it makes it so that you keep your speed. Now the second enemy I lost speed because I tried to jump off him a little bit too early. So there you go. As you can see, I can get a bounce off him, even though the same button is jump as is to hover. So it just requires timing, and you're definitely going to want to time it as you're landing on the enemy or slightly after. And again, the height of this bounce can be adjusted depending on how you hold the button, how long you hold it. So if I hold it a bit longer, I'm going to get a full bounce, a full high bounce, and be able to reach these high platforms here. It's particularly tricky with Diddy, though, because of the hover, and Dixie has the same issue. Luckily, we don't really want to use Diddy above water anyway, so it's not too bad. The reason we want to use him underwater, though, is because he actually has the fastest underwater ability, which is the jetpack. So as you can see, by boosting like this, I'm just kind of boosting, holding the button until almost the boost is completed, and then releasing and pressing again to get full distance out of my boosts. This method is the fastest way of traveling underwater, so Diddy is preferred for a lot of underwater sections. As you can see, all it is just pressing the button. It's nothing fancy. You can do little short bursts as well by going a bit faster. The reason you would do these is kind of to gain, try and maximize the amount of time you're boosting to the end of a section. So you can kind of do the kind of boosting you want with no real issues there. You can also do the swimming cancels like I did earlier with Solo DK. You can kind of mix them with the boosting, so boost, swim, cancel, boost. Whoops. Just to kind of line stuff up or kill enemies or however you want to keep it going. So if I want to kill this guy here, it can roll and then just start a boost right after by pressing A pretty much as the roll's done. So that's why Diddy's particularly good underwater. Yeah, that's pretty much it with Diddy. Nothing else exciting. So again, that was the issue with the bounce. Because I went to bounce and I pressed A bit too early. Okay, so that's pretty much Diddy. Now for Dixie. Dixie's important above water, actually, because she gives us extra height. More height than you get by even a full bounce or a full jump, normally. And there's a lot of platforms where you're going to want to reach them quickly to skip some stuff. So we're just going to go into 1-2 and grab a Dixie now. And with Dixie's flutter, it ends up actually being strictly better than Diddy's flutter, which is the reason we don't use Diddy above water. So pretty much any time that you're not using Cranky or Solo DK, you're going to want to use Dixie above water. So as you can see, with the infinite rolls and the distance of my roll jumps, I can actually clear enemies, like lots of enemies at once, instead of having to fool around and jump through them. So the roll jumping is super important. Alright, so now we're going to switch to Dixie. So the flutter gives us a lot of extra height. If you play this game quite a bit casually, you'll probably have been using Dixie a lot. But she can get up to different heights and make very far distance jumps. So there are a lot of situations where we're going to want to use Dixie. And that was an enemy, obviously, I can't bounce on. So yeah, there's a lot of situations where we're going to want to use Dixie for extra height and distance, and not Diddy, because Dixie can actually get us higher anyway. So it's the same, it's basically the exact same ability, except you can go higher. So the same tricks apply with the bouncing with Dixie. So as you don't want to really bounce too early. If you go too early, you'll start a flutter and lose all your speed. As you can see, I can also go a little bit late when I bounce on the enemy. Let's try it. So as you can see there was a little bit of a clip you saw. The animation slightly changed from the bounce to the giant bounce. That's because I pressed A little bit late. So that way I'm able to keep all my forward momentum and still get a bounce off. So when you're rooting through enemies, like the beginning of this level, I'll show how to root through this level. So that shall respawn by now. So we'll start by getting up here. You can roll off all this stuff. Bounce, bounce. So by doing those bounces, I'm able to not lose any speed and still keep my forward momentum going. So I'm going to talk slightly about the advantage of bouncing on enemies instead of just roll jumping past them or through them. So the advantage is that every time I do this roll jump, so I got to roll jump, roll jump, roll jump. I'm actually losing a small amount of time per jump. I think it's close to 0.1 second. It might be a little more or less. It doesn't really matter. But every time I go, the game's... I do lose a little bit of time per jump. So instead of doing that, I can roll. Let's say jump, roll, lose one jump by being able to roll through stuff. Roll, 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 roll. That's why the maximum roll, or the infinite roll, is also a bit better. So by bouncing on enemies too, I don't lose any of that time as long as I'm not losing speed on the bounces. So I'm able to kind of keep my forward momentum and not lose any of that speed there. So like that. Yeah, that's pretty much it for Diddy and Dixie. I'll do a little bit of Dixie underwater here, because her ability is a bit useful in a couple spots. So I can do the same thing with Dixie with the swim cancels or the rolling. And Dixie's ability underwater is the hair twirl, and her little hair is equally fast to just swim cancels like this. So it's the same speed. You can do that as an alternative. It's a bit trickier to move using the hair twirl, but not too bad. It's pretty good. And the twirl also gets you through really strong currents that you can't go through normally. So there are a couple situations where we do that. Diddy can also get through strong currents, but it takes a lot longer, and it's a much more difficult timing. You have to time boost very specifically. So yeah, that's Dixie. Yeah, now we're going to move on to Cranky, who is pretty much the main character. We're going to be using Cranky as much as possible in the run. So you always want to have Cranky with you. Unless you're one of the specific levels where you need the other, like Kong for something specific, either a water level or a level with lots of large gaps that Cranky can't get past. Because Cranky's ability is pretty unique. It does a lot of things for us. It's the cane bounce, and if you played this game casually, you may not have used Cranky very much. I know I didn't. I used Dixie a lot casually. But once you get into the groove of using the cane to pogo around, you'll definitely not want to go back. Okay, so we'll start with Cranky. Go back to 1-1 because it's a bit easy to show off. So yeah, Cranky's got the cane pogo, and it's just activated when you press the jump button when you're in the air. You can only do it once in the air per jump, so you can't just pull in and out the cane. Ha ha ha. You have to just, you get one pogo per bounce. It's pretty helpful because it actually mitigates a lot of the problems with bouncing with the other characters. So, whereas I had to show you how to kind of bounce specifically on enemies in order not to lose any speed with Diddy and Dixie, with Cranky that problem's gone because there's no way to lose speed with the pogo. In fact, the pogo is so good it actually keeps all your forward momentum no matter what speed you're going at. So we'll start off in 1-1 here. So if I'm just going forward, I can pogo, and every pogo I'm going to keep my speed, as you see, my walking speed. Okay, it's pretty useful. As long as I'm holding right, I'm keeping the same speed. You can also do the rolls, of course, roll jumps, and then keep your roll speed per pogos. This is why the pogo is useful. And you also have some different heights of pogos. So you have maximum pogos, where you just hold the button as high as possible. And this height of the max pogo is as high as Dixie takes you with her hair flutter, which is why it's useful in the speedrun. Because we can go this high without any time loss, without any momentum loss. So that's the reason why Cranky's the most important. I also have like little mini pogos, medium pogos, high pogos, and there's quite a range of in-betweens that are pretty hard to achieve. But mostly you just need to know the max pogo and like a smaller kind of pogo. So yeah, with the enemies, as you can see, I can just hold the button and I get a full pogo off all those enemies. And the full pogo allows me to keep all my speed and keep going without losing any time or momentum. So I can pogo through stuff, pogo on enemies. I can't reach that anyway. Yeah, so basically we want to pogo through as much as possible. The other thing about the pogo is because each roll jump loses you 0.1 second, if I were to do 5 roll jumps across here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, let's say, so 7 roll jumps. If I'm just pogoing all of these instead of roll jumping, I'm actually losing no time at all. So it's a lot smoother, and I'm not losing, whatever, 0.5 seconds or whatever it may be. So that's kind of the basics of the movement. Again, to reiterate, you just want to basically roll jump and roll through as much as possible. Create your routing through that. So don't be walking around or like hopping over stuff. Definitely try to be rolling and jumping and bopping. Those are your kind of main, that's your main movement tech, with a bit of the underwater tech in there. So just make up kind of what's comfortable. You know, you can double bop or double bounce, whatever it is. Roll through enemies. Yeah, there's a couple enemies that have like pokers out front. You can also use the slam, disables them for a second, and then you can roll through them. So if you're having trouble with some enemies like that, yeah, just you're rolling. You got to trust the rolls. DK can make large gap jumps like this, no problem. Yeah, just practice your roll jumps and practice some routes through the enemies, and you really shouldn't have too much of a problem. Yeah, that's it for the basic movement tech. I also have a tutorial on grabbing barrels. That might be a little bit outdated, but it allows you to kind of grab barrels and start rolls pretty much right away. So again, you lose virtually no speed. And yeah, so that's about it for the basic movement tech in Tropical Freeze. So good luck on your learning, and yeah, the entire community is always here to help. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys.